What if I told you some people in history did not just die, they were turned into living displays of pain? In ancient times, executions were not just punishment. They were a message, a terrifying message written in blood, screams, and broken bodies. In today's world, even the thought of execution is shocking. But for ancient societies, it was common and it was meant to be seen. Crowds would gather. Children stood on their fathers' shoulders. The smell of sweat, smoke, and fear filled the air. The executioner's axe glinted in the sun, and the victim's scream often echoed through the town square. This was not just justice. It was theater. And some of these methods? So horrific, they are almost forgotten until now. Let us take you through the most brutal ancient execution methods you have never heard of. Imagine being tied inside two hollowed-out logs, with just your head, hands, and feet sticking out. Then imagine being force-fed milk and honey until you vomit. Your body is smeared with more honey and then you are left floating on a stagnant pond. Why? Because this method, called scaphism, was designed to make you rot alive. The smell of honey attracted insects. Flies laid eggs in open wounds. Maggots began eating the flesh. Victims often died slowly over days, covered in sores, vomit, and crawling bugs. It was not just painful, it was humiliating. This device looked like a bronze statue of a bull. Inside, a hollow space just big enough for a person. Once the victim was locked inside, a fire was lit underneath. As the metal heated, the person roasted alive. Here is the most twisted part. The bull's head was designed with pipes, so the victim's screams sounded like a roaring bull. Imagine the sound of metal creaking, the skin sizzling, the smell of burning flesh, the crowd cheering. The inventor of the brazen bull, Perillos, was ironically the first person to be executed in it by the king he made it for. Most of us have seen magic shows where a person is sawed in half. But centuries ago, this was no trick. The condemned was hung upside down, legs wide apart. Then, a large saw was used to cut through their body from the groin downward. Because the brain received blood longer in this position, the person stayed alive deep into the process. Some remained conscious until the saw reached their stomach. Blood poured like a fountain. Screams echoed. Death came slowly. It was not punishment, it was a warning. Used until the early 1900s, lynching was one of the most painful and humiliating deaths ever recorded. The executioner used a small, sharp knife to cut the victim's flesh piece by piece. Arms, legs, chest, each slice intentional. It could take hours. Worse, sometimes victims were given opium to keep them awake through the entire ordeal. By the end, they were barely human, just a bleeding pile of limbs in pain. Photographs from the early 20th century prove how horrifying this method truly was. The breaking wheel, or Catherine wheel, was simple and cruel. A person was tied onto a large wooden wheel. The executioner then used a heavy iron bar to smash each limb. Bones broke, joints snapped, flesh split. Then the wheel was raised on a pole, displaying the twisted body for all to see. Sometimes the executioner gave a mercy blow to the chest or head. Sometimes not. The victim often lived for hours or days. Birds pecked at their flesh. Rain washed over broken bones. All in public view. Vlad III of Wallachia, known as Vlad the Impaler, was not a legend, he was real. And his favorite method of punishment? Driving a long wooden pole through a person's body. The goal was not to hit vital organs. It was to slide slowly from the rectum or vagina through the body, sometimes exiting through the mouth. The pole was then raised upright, and the victim died slowly, sometimes after 24 hours. The sky turned red with sunset. Birds circled. The pole swayed in the wind. Thousands were impaled to terrorize enemies. Vlad's forest of bodies could be seen from miles away. This method was exactly what it sounds like: peeling the skin from a living person. Usually started at the feet or arms, the executioner used sharp knives to remove skin slowly. Imagine the feel of metal slicing through nerves. The victim often died of shock, blood loss, or infection. Assyrians flayed rebels and nailed the skins to city walls. In medieval Europe, it was used to punish traitors. No painkiller, no mercy, just layers of suffering. Yes, elephants. In royal courts, trained elephants were used to crush, rip, or throw victims. Sometimes, elephants were trained to crush slowly, to step on limbs first, saving the skull for last. It was not just about death. It was about domination. The ground shook. Blood spattered. The crowd roared. A symbol of royal power, elephants made sure no one challenged the throne. The condemned was placed in a cauldron filled with water, oil, or molten metal. Then the fire was lit underneath. Slowly, the liquid boiled and so did the victim. Skin blistered, muscles tore, eyeballs popped. The smell was like a butcher's shop in hell. Sometimes the person was lowered in bit by bit, feet, then legs, then torso. A full-body horror. This tool was made to punish men who tried to kill the king. It was a pair of iron pincers, shaped like a crocodile's mouth. Heated until glowing red, then used to crush a man's genitals. There is not much more to say, except, imagine the screams. You might think these tortures are long gone, but human cruelty does not always fade with time. Even in the 20th century, brutal executions continued, firing squads, hangings, electric chairs, and beheadings. Even today, in some parts of the world, public punishments still exist. History whispers a terrible truth: civilization is thin. Beneath it lies fear, anger, and pain. We have seen blood, bones, and burning flesh. But the question is, would you survive this horror? Could you handle scaphism? Would you face the brazen bull? Or would you beg for mercy? Let us know in the comments. And remember, history is not just kings and queens. It is also chains, screams, and blood. Hit like, subscribe for more dark stories.